This has been an adventure. Some time ago, I was fortunate enough to meet a personal hero of mine, and I boldly stated to him, if you're ever looking for a particular synthesizer, you let me know and I could probably find it for you. Well, I spent the long drive back to Texas wondering just how badly I'd put my foot in my mouth, because he was in fact looking for a particular synthesizer, a very expensive one, and an incredibly rare one. So, had I bitten off more than I could chew? Was I going to look like what we in Texas call all hat and no cattle? Was I going to be a 10-gallon Stetson on a 1-gallon head? Well, as it turns out, one of these did pop up, and for a year I tried to work a deal on that. Eventually, in the end, the deal crumbled. The owner decided he was going to hang on to it. Finding one of these is incredible. Finding two of these seems impossible. But in the midst of that one deal crumbling, another one did pop up. So I immediately jumped into the Synthmobile this morning. I'm hastily crossing several state lines, and I'm determined not to let this one get away. Here at Syntaur, we live to bring old synthesizers back to life. We find vintage keyboards wherever we can, and our crew restores them back to their original splendor. We also supply parts to tens of thousands of customers all around the world so that they can restore and repair their own keyboards. At our shop in Texas, we have on hand parts for the synths used by pros from the 1960s all the way to today's brand new keyboards. Our inside and out knowledge has made us known as the Synth Wizards. If you've been into synthesizers long enough, chances are that there's a particular one that you've been dreaming of owning. And in most cases, it's money that stands in the way of our keyboard dreams. Sometimes, though, it's more than that. Even when money is no object, if the synth of your dreams is incredibly rare, you may come up empty-handed no matter how hard and how long you look. Hi, I'm Sam Mims of Syntaur, and in this episode, we're going to try to find a synthesizer that a client has been searching for decades. That elusive keyboard is the ultra-rare Yamaha Dx1. If you're like me, you've never laid eyes on a Dx1. It's because it was the most expensive synthesizer Yamaha ever manufactured, and one of the most rare. If you think the beastly CS80 had a monstrous price, the Dx1 cost twice as much. When it hit the market in 1984, a new Dx1 had a price tag of nearly $14,000. In dog years, that's about $33,500 with today's money. At that price, the Dx1 was only for the superstars and the super rich, and there were only about 140 ever produced. 35 years later, who knows how many are still around. Well, it's day 2 of my journey, and by this evening, I should be the owner of a beautiful Yamaha Dx1 synthesizer. My biggest concern is the amount of money I'm paying for it. How do you price something for which there's no market data? So something is only worth what someone else is willing to pay for it, and what if I'm the only one willing to pay that much? Ouch! What if I contact my buyer and he says, oh, golly gee, Sam, I don't know. I want to do right by you, I really do, but that's a whole lot of greenbacks for this whole contraption. I'm not about to turn back, though. I'm confident that a synth this rare and this desirable is going to attract a buyer, even if it's not the one I have in mind now. Well, I'm sorta confident. So I press onward, and as the day's shadows begin to lengthen, I arrive at my destination.
Hello, I'm Todd Smith, and I'm here with Sam Mims from Syntaur, and we hope that you guys will enjoy the tour.
And what a tour this was! First of all, to get to Todd's keyboard room, you take a little stroll through his collection of vintage arcade games. Then you step into a keyboard wonderland that will give any synthomaniac goosebumps. There's an Oberheim 8-voice polyphonic, Selena string synthesizer, one of Greg Hawkes' mini Korgs atop a very rare Yamaha SS30, atop a very rare Yamaha GS1, a Gibson combo organ, a couple of mini Moogs, vintage and reissue, an Oberheim OBX, a Yamaha CS80 and Moog Taurus 1 pedals, a Linn LM1 drum machine, a Baldwin electric harpsichord, a Mellotron, and of course a DX1, among other things.
I am the third owner of this keyboard. We've had it for the past 10 years. And we've maintained it and babied it. We had over 25,000 DX sounds that we used over the course period of time for a certain project. And we feel that we need to just let it go to another person that can use it more than we can.
Wow, this thing is a beauty, and it really sounds fabulous. Hearing it and playing it makes it obvious that a DX1 is truly a very fine instrument, and this one has definitely been pampered and loved. It was great hearing Todd's stories about where all these keyboards came from. Some of the samplers belonged to Jeff Downs, the GX1 belonged to Anne Murray, and it was just a lot of fun hanging out in a room full of so much cool gear. But now it's time to get one piece of that cool gear out of there. Can you imagine tripping about now? Thankfully, we got the DX1 carefully into its case, and I was sure glad that case had wheels. I have the DX1 with me in the van. Mission accomplished. That thing was a beast to load up and get up the stairs and into the van, but gosh, it's beautiful. It sounds gorgeous, it looks gorgeous. I'm so excited. Somebody is going to be really happy to get this. Dealing with rare synthesizers is just cooler than cool. We'll occasionally have a classic Sequential Circuits Prophet 5 in the house, and the Rev 3 versions are hard to find these days. But how about the earlier Rev 2, which has amazing sounding SSM filters and is quite rare and very collectible? Well, amazingly enough, we currently have a Rev 3, a Rev 2, and an ultra-rare Rev 1 Prophet 5, all happy together under the same roof, and we're refurbishing the later 2 models. The Rev 1s were handmade by Dave Smith in his garage back in 1978, and there were only about 180 of them made. I'm not sure if we'll try to refurbish this one, as they can require quite a bit of work. I pity the fool that tries to fix up a Rev 1 Prophet. Well, I'm on day 3 of my journey. I didn't sleep very well last night and have about 11 hours of driving today, so I'm feeling like a crispy critter. But it's been a good day. This morning I went to visit someone and got 3 additional keyboards from him after getting the DX1 last night. So I picked up this morning a Fender Rhodes electric piano, a Yamaha YC30 combo organ, and something I've never come across before, a Freeman string symphonizer, which is a really cool string machine. Sounds great, and I'm really looking forward to getting home with that one. So another day's driving after this, and I'll be back at the shop. I was so tired at the end of the 3rd day that when I was getting a hotel room for the night, I looked out at the Synthmobile and spotted a ghost inside messing with my new DX1. Okay, it was really just a reflection in the glass of the hotel clerk, but it sure startled me. It's day 4, and I'll be home this evening with the goods. After a 4-day road trip, we have a DX1 resting happily in our showroom. And the best news is that I've contacted my buyer, and he's happy to pay the price for this rare beast. He's super excited to finally get one. What a huge relief. The DX in the name clues you in that this is a digital synthesizer, using FM synthesis to generate its sounds, just like the DX5, TX7, DX72, DX100, TX802, and the classic DX7, along with about a zillion other Yamaha products. But the DX1 is definitely on another level. It's essentially two complete DX7s joined together, and that opens up sound possibilities that, while still digital, are definitely tipping into the realm of analog fatness. There are other alluring aspects of the DX1 also. For one thing, it uses real wooden keys, 73 of them, that feel great and that respond not only to velocity, but to polyphonic aftertouch as well. In other words, every individual key can modulate its own note by pressing harder. Most keyboards, even today, modulate all notes together if you press harder on any key. The DX1 definitely takes that to another level, and these nice keys live between gorgeous Brazilian rosewood end panels, along with a very well-designed front panel that makes getting a handle on the complexities of FM synthesis much easier. Now, about those complexities of FM synthesis. What the heck is FM synthesis anyway? Most people are intimidated by programming and even understanding how FM synthesizers work. And admittedly, it's much more complicated than analog synthesizers, which make their noises by subtractive synthesis. Let's take a look at a Minimoog. A basic analog synth has an oscillator, which generates the raw sound, and then a filter, which changes the timbre by removing or subtracting certain portions of the sound, such as the high-end frequencies. The oscillator electronically creates different waveforms, like sawtooth, square, or triangle waves, and the different waveforms give the sound a particular character. An FM synth has no controls for waveforms, filters, or the other stuff most synth nerds get excited about. Instead, all the business happens with operators, which can be carriers or modulators, and which are grouped together in algorithms. I can see your eyes starting to glaze over already. Okay, forget I said all that stuff. Let's go back to the Minimoog. Here is a very basic straight-up triangle wave. As a static sound, it's not very interesting. But if we add vibrato to it, suddenly it begins to sound musical. The vibrato is created by using a low-frequency oscillator to slightly modulate the pitch of the triangle wave. This is like Synth 101, very basic stuff that most of you could do in your sleep. But guess what? We've just created a two-operator FM synthesis program. I bet you didn't know you knew that. Our basic sound, the original triangle wave, is called the carrier, and the slow modulation LFO is called the modulator. And because we're modulating the frequency of the triangle wave, this is called frequency modulation, or FM. So we've already cleared the first hurdles of learning FM synthesis. All you have to do is change the labels of what you already know. Don't call this an oscillator anymore, call it a carrier. And this LFO shall now be known as modulator. And each chunk of the sound program shall now be called an operator. The organization of the two operators, modulator into carrier, is called the algorithm. That's it, you're doing FM synthesis. Walking the walk and talking the talk. Now, let's take a look back at our Minimoog FM program and take things to the next level. Let's take this LFO, which is called the modulator in FM speak, and get a bit crazy with it. Let's really crank up the frequency, and instead of applying just a subtle taste of it to the triangle wave, let's really hammer it with a big dose of the modulator. Now the sound has gone from very basic to quite complex. And if we were to envelope the modulator, in other words, if we apply a lot at first, then ramp it down to 0 after 1 second, for instance, then we can get a pretty dynamic and complex sound. Now you're getting a taste of what FM is all about. The ability to make complex timbres that are beyond the realm of other types of synthesizers. Everything we've looked at so far in understanding FM synthesis has used a simple two-operator algorithm, a modulator and a carrier. And we saw that this can easily create some very complex timbres. But the DX7, the de facto standard of FM synthesis, uses 6-operator algorithms, and these operators can be arranged in a multitude of ways. All of them generate sine waves, and the algorithms can be as simple as 6 sine waves playing pitches together, to modulators modulating other modulators, which then modulate other modulators. So this is where there's an understandable breakdown in the process of imagining a particular sound, and then working out in your head how you would go about creating that sound. Who would guess, for instance, that the classic DX electric piano sound uses an algorithm of 3 modulators feeding 3 carriers? FM sound design is definitely less intuitive than subtractive synthesis. But hopefully at this point, FM is not as intimidating as it was an hour ago.
Hi, I'm Kayla, and if you like Synth Lizards, like and subscribe below to get notifications about future videos.
One quality of FM sounds is that because they're digitally generated, they are perfect and exact, clean and pristine. In the 1980s, this was a fabulous feature and caused keyboard players the world over to unload their analog synths at garage sale prices. On an FM synth, if you play a middle C at a specific velocity, you'll get the exact identical output every single time you play that middle C at the same velocity. Not so with analog. Different voices of an analog synthesizer will never sound exactly identical, and even repeated notes using the same voice will be slightly different due to instabilities of the electronic components. It's these random instabilities and imperfections that give analog synths their inherent warmth and fatness. And in more modern days, this is what caused keyboard players the world over to buy back analog synths at hugely inflated prices. Now let's take a look at the DX1 specifically and see why it's so magical. The answer is because it blurs the lines between the pristine FM sound and that fat analog warmth. It shares the best qualities of both. The DX1 can be thought of as 2 DX7 synthesizers wrapped up together in a single package. These 2 independent sound engines can be split across the keyboard, or better yet, layered on top of each other. Most of us are familiar with the sound of a DX7, and if you've breathed within the last few decades, you've heard hundreds of DX7 sounds on the radio, in movie scores, and so on. The DX7 sounds characteristically clean and glassy, and a bit thin to my ears. But what do you do when you want to fatten up a synth sound? You take another oscillator, detune it slightly, and throw that into the mix. And in a sense, that's exactly what the DX1 does. But instead of laying on just a detuned oscillator, with the DX1 you can layer an entire additional sound engine. Let's hear an example. Here's a single program called OB8, obviously an FM emulation of Oberheim's analog fatness, except that it's not really that fat. But now, let's do what the DX1 does best. Let's stack 2 of those OB8 programs, slightly detuned, with one going to the left channel and one going to the right. The result is a much more spacious and fat sound. So we have the clarity of the digital FM sound, and then we stack it like we stack analog oscillators, and the result is a very nice hybrid of the 2 types of synthesis. Can you achieve the same sonic results with 2 DX7s? Sure, and Yamaha's DX5 has the same electronics as a DX1, but in a smaller package without the great panel displays and the poly aftertouch keybed. Something like a Yamaha TX816 rack, which contains essentially 8 DX7s, can go even further with stacked FM sounds. But nothing else does it with the ease and elegance of a DX1, with everything under one roof controlled from an excellent front panel, and with a masterful poly aftertouch keybed attached. And nothing else looks nearly this good. Doing it with a DX1 is definitely doing it in style. When you poke around the insides of synthesizers long enough, you may stumble across an Easter egg. Not the kind that will start smelling awful if you don't find it, but the kind that a synth designer or engineer planted to bring a smile to your face if you're lucky enough to find it. One of my favorites is on the Ensoniq MR61 or MR76 keyboards. Just pull up any of the 3 encoder knobs, and you'll find a cute face peeking up from underneath. Circuit boards have been a favored place to hide little unexpected tidbits, and sequential circuits and EMU have been leaders in this field. The Sequential Pro 1 shows some nice images that might induce you into yoga poses and meditations. And the Prophet 600 shows Kilroy and a cute puppy. EMU's SP12 includes the Lewis McCrawfish Memorial Board, and this tiny cryptic message that, when read backwards, tells you that Paul is the walrus. The EMU E5000 main board shows you either where on the sampler to get more sugar or to put more sugar, and the Emax also has some fun finds. Here's an EMU playing an Emax. Here's a description of how rad the Emax rack is. And here's what to do if your sampler catches on fire. So the next time you're nosing about inside your synthesizer, see if you can find a fun Easter egg. With the DX1 in our showroom, we had a week to make sure everything on it worked perfectly. And of course we wanted to explore this magical beast. Carlos enjoyed driving it with a sequencer while changing programs and algorithms to get a good feel for the workings of the DX1.
It's kind of comical, you know, steering this magnificent instrument here with this little $100 thing, but it really helps me to kind of understand what's going on. The DX1 is really unique in the fact that it just has such a rich, full sound to it. And a lot of that comes from the layering options. A lot of people say, well, it's just two DX7s in a box. And I think once you really get your hands on it and you hear it, it becomes very apparent very quickly that it's more than just 2 DX7s in a box. The Model T, for its time, it represented a very large technological advancement, and you know, there's plenty of vehicles nowadays that can go a lot faster than a Model T. Yeah. But
a lot more comfortable.
Maybe have some AC or some Bluetooth,
yeah.
But it doesn't devalue the Model T in any way. And there's a reason that they're so sought after and people collect them. And you know, a lot of that has to do with the historical significance and the driving force that it was. And I think that the DX1 is a very comparable situation to that. You can put all the specs and numbers that you want on a page, but until you're actually in front of it, it encompasses a lot more. And it really didn't click until you can see the light up display and you have real-time interaction with what's going on.
Yeah, it kind of fooled me because you have things that seem to be envelopes, and so at first I started adjusting the release time and stuff, and nothing would change, and then you pointed out to me, well, you're only on one of the operators, and so you really, it's a different sort of thing to wrap your brain around, but this layout compared to a DX,
yeah, night and day.
It's like driving a Cadillac.
Yeah, well, it weighs about as much as a Cadillac. Yeah. So the DX1 and FM synthesis, it works on a system of operators, and what's really cool is that you can cycle through how the operators interact. So you can take a layered voice and get instantaneous that's just cycling through algorithms. It's like do-si-doing your partner at the Sonic Square Dance. It's pretty awesome.
After getting to know this DX1 for a few days, I said my goodbyes by letting its sounds inspire me to make some music. Finally, Gerald touched up some minor scuffs and polished everything up nicely, and it was time to pack this beauty in its case and load it up for a cross-country drive. Mary and Kayla and I hopped into the Synthmobile and headed north. Before reaching our main destination, we stopped in Chicago to pick up a Rhodes Chroma, not the rare keyboard version, but the even more rare Chroma Expander. And then, in the midst of that transaction, the seller said something that's music to my ears. Hey, I've got something in the basement that you might be interested in.
Well, that's just fun. It's like a treasure hunt.
There's a synclavier down here somewhere.
Go down or out?
Yeah, why don't we put it right on that case?
Okay.
In perfect condition.
Wow.
You know, it's funny. Their sales pitch is that it's the last synthesizer you'll ever own.
Yeah. I think a number of people use that one.
Yeah.
Well, what would convince you to part with it?
I hadn't even thought about it, so.
Without knowing what these are worth, or if this one even works, I made Pat an offer. And before Mary could even say 12-operator FM synthesis, this one was being loaded into the Synthmobile. Now, with the Rhodes Chroma and the Synclavier in the van, we're taking a day off to have some fun in Chicago. So we've made it to Fort Wayne, Indiana, to the home of Sweetwater Sound, where we're going to deliver our DX1 to the guy who created this empire. Sweetwater is an amazing place, employing over 1,700 people, and our DX1 is going to its founder and president, Chuck Surack. I was excited to meet Chuck about a year ago because I've been intrigued by the growth of his business over the last few decades. It has been nothing short of phenomenal. When Chuck said he wanted a DX1, I wanted to be the one to find it for him.
Hi, Chuck.
How are you, Sam?
I'm doing great.
Oh my goodness.
When we met a year ago, I said, is there any synthesizer you're looking for? I
Yes.
can find it for you. I didn't know you were going to say a DX1.
That's beautiful.
But there it is.
Wow. That's cool.
How long have you been looking for one?
Since 1984.
Oh, wow.
In 1984, seriously, in 1984, my best friend at the time was a music dealer, Yamaha music dealer. And I was invited by him to go to the NAMM show in Chicago at that point. And I was going specifically to look at the DX1 and the Kurzweil K250. I broke my best friend's heart when I said, I think the K250 sounds more real. and I bought a Kurzweil K250. But I've always wanted the DX1 ever since. And, and particularly the last 10 years or so, as I've, you know, added keyboards and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So. Wow.
Plunk on a key.
All right, cool.
It's plugged
I think it looks great.
To bring it here to you.
Wow.
Dare I ask, is there any other keyboard that you're looking for? And don't say an Ondas Martineau or something.
No. I don't know. I mean, I've wanted one of these for so long, and I knew they made 242 of them or something.
140.
104. Okay. Yeah. There's another thing I wanted that had 204. It was a car. They made 242 of them. You're right. 140 of these.
Which car are you looking for?
No. I'm all right on cars. So, that's very cool. Awesome. Yeah. I'm excited. It's amazing.
It sounds big.
It's how big it sounds for FM. So much warmer than a traditional DX. Okay.
All right, you're going to have some fun.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chuck.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Very cool.
With our business concluded, we had lunch in the Sweetwater food court, then slid on out of there. What a fun place to visit, or to work, or to deliver rare keyboards to. We pulled off the nearly impossible. We located a super rare DX1, snatched it up as fast as we could, and got it back to the shop for a toothbrushing and a full checkup. Then we delivered it to our client in Indiana, who has been looking for one of these since 1984. And just to make sure we're not melancholy over saying goodbye to this incredible keyboard, we picked up a Rhodes Chroma expander and a synclavier along the way. That should keep the wizards entertained for a bit.
Anybody that like keyboard is a damn sinner.